Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars change from white dots to burning streaks of light. The alien ships appeared without warning, massive and dark against the black of space. They moved like predators, silent and deadly, their hulls reflecting no light from Earth's sun. Jake had never seen anything like them in his 20 years of military service. Lisa Grant ran through the corridors of the command center deep beneath Colorado. Her boots echoed off metal walls as alarms screamed around her. The screens showed the same terrible truth over and over. The cities were burning. New York had become a crater of glass. London was gone. Tokyo existed only in memory now. The alien weapons turned everything they touched into smooth, melted glass that glowed with heat. Alex Carter fired his rifle at the tall figures moving through the smoke. The bullets bounced off their armor like raindrops. The aliens moved with purpose, their weapons making no sound as they killed everything in their path. Alex had fought in 3 wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. These creatures were not here to conquer. They were here to end everything. The Zephyrians spoke through machines that turned their words into human language. Their voices were cold and empty of feeling. They said humanity was too dangerous to live among the stars. They said humans were violent and would spread like a disease if left alone. They said this was mercy, that they could have killed everyone instead of just most of them. Dr. Maya Rodriguez worked at her computers as the building shook around her. The deep space array was the most important thing on Earth right now. She had to warn the colonies before the aliens found her. Her fingers moved fast across the keys as she sent everything she knew about the attackers to Proxima Centauri and Kepler. The alien ships had a weakness in their shields when they fired their main guns. Their armor was strong but not perfect. She sent the locations of their command ships and the frequencies of their communications. The wall exploded inward just as she hit the final key. Maya smiled as the ceiling fell on her. The message was sent. The colonies would know what happened. Here. They would be ready. Jake watched his ship die around him. The Defiance had been humanity's pride, the fastest ship ever built. Now it was breaking apart as alien fire tore through its hull. His crew was dead or dying. The escape pods were gone. He was alone on a bridge filled with smoke and sparking wires. Through the broken windows he could see Earth below, its blue. Surface now marked with glowing scars where cities used to be. The aliens had come from nowhere. Humanity's sensors had not seen them coming. They had appeared like ghosts and attacked like demons. In 6 hours they had broken humanity's back. All the great ships were burning or broken. All the space stations were silent. All the proud cities were glass. Lisa reached the evacuation center as the last transport lifted off. Hundreds of people ran toward underground bunkers that might keep them safe from the fire raining from the sky. Children cried for parents who would never come home. Old people sat down in the dirt and waited to die. Lisa helped who she could, but there were so many and so few places to hide. The aliens landed troops in every major city that still stood. They were tall and thin, with armor that changed color like oil on water. Their faces were hidden behind masks, but their eyes glowed with cold blue light. They killed soldiers and police with weapons that turned humans to ash. They destroyed every car, every computer, every piece of technology they found. Alex organized the survivors in what was left of Washington. Military training kept him moving when others froze with fear. He gathered weapons and ammunition from dead soldiers. He found radios that still worked and tried to contact other groups. Most of the time he heard only static. Sometimes he heard screaming. The bombardment continued for 3 days. When it finally stopped, the silence was worse than the noise had been. The aliens had destroyed every satellite, every power plant, every factory. They had turned highways into melted stone and airports into craters. They left monitoring stations in orbit to watch the survivors and make sure humanity never reached for the stars again. Jake died when his ship's reactor exploded, taking the last of Earth's space fleet with him. Lisa died when a bunker collapsed. On the fourth day, Alex died fighting alien soldiers in the ruins of the Pentagon. Maya died knowing her message had reached the colonies. They all died believing that humanity was finished. But they were wrong. In hidden places around the world, people had survived. They crawled out of bunkers and sewers and caves to find a world turned to ash and glass. They found cities that were graveyards and skies that burned with alien fire. But they were alive, and as long as humans lived, there was hope. The aliens thought they had buried humanity under the weight of destruction. They were wrong. Seeds grow best in burned ground. 25 years had passed since the sky burned and the cities turned to glass. Ben Collins walked through the streets of New Detroit, built in the shadow of the old city's ruins. The buildings were made of scavenged metal and concrete blocks. Nothing fancy, but they kept the rain out and the cold away. People moved with purpose through the streets, carrying water buckets and tool bags, their faces hard from years of struggle. The Zephyrians still watched from their stations in the sky. Their drones flew over the settlements once a week, counting people and checking for forbidden technology. Anything more complex than a hammer or a wheel brought swift punishment. The aliens had learned that humans were clever, so they watched carefully for signs of progress. Kate Sullivan stood in the ruins of what had once been the White House. The basement levels had survived the bombing, and she had turned them into a command center for the resistance. Maps covered the walls, marked with symbols that showed safe houses, weapon caches, and patrol routes. Kate had been a young soldier when the aliens came. Now she was gray-haired and scarred, but her eyes still burned with the need for revenge. Danny. Walsh worked in his forge, the hammer ringing against hot metal. Before the war, he had been a computer programmer. Now he was the best blacksmith in 3 settlements. His hands were rough and burned from years of shaping iron, but they were also skilled at making things the aliens could not detect. Hidden inside his simple farming tools were parts that could become weapons. Concealed in his horseshoes were components for radios and explosives. The younger generation had grown up in this broken world, but they refused to accept it as normal. Sam Johnson was 23 years old and had never seen a working car or computer. But he had heard the stories from the old ones, tales of flying machines and cities that touched the clouds. He worked as a mechanic, fixing the simple machines that kept the settlements running, but his real talent was understanding how things worked. Claire Adams moved through the medical tent, checking on patients injured in yesterday's work accident. She had learned healing from books and practice, not from schools that no longer existed. The aliens allowed basic medicine because dead humans served no purpose, but anything too advanced brought their attention. Claire had to be careful when treating serious injuries, using old methods that left scars but saved lives. Dr. Amy Foster taught children in a hidden classroom beneath the ruins of a library. The Zephyrians allowed basic education, reading and writing and simple math, but they watched for signs of scientific learning. Amy had been a NASA scientist before the war, and she carried the knowledge of humanity's achievements in her head. She taught the children about stars and planets and the laws of physics, disguising advanced concepts as simple stories. The resistance had learned patience over the years. Quick strikes and loud rebellions only brought death from the sky. Instead, they built slowly, gathering resources and people, spreading knowledge and hope. They salvaged metal from the ruins and hid it in secret workshops. They taught fighting skills to farmers and miners. They prepared for a war that might not come. For decades, Pete Harrison had been captured 3 months ago during a supply run. The aliens kept him in a white room and asked him questions about human nature. They wanted to know why humans fought when defeat was certain. They wanted to understand why survivors kept having children in a world with no future. Pete gave them simple answers while hiding the complex truth. Humans fought because surrender meant death of the spirit. They had children because hope was stronger than fear. The alien interrogator was tall and thin like all Zephyrians, with skin that changed color when it spoke. It asked Pete why humans would not accept their place as a primitive species. Other races had been grateful for the peace that came with technological limitation. Only humans continued to resist. Pete smiled and told the alien that it did not understand what it had created. Before the invasion, humans had been divided by borders and beliefs. Now they were united by shared suffering and common purpose. The Zephyrians had not destroyed humanity. They had forged it into something stronger. Maria Santos worked in the power station that provided electricity to New Detroit. The generators were simple steam engines that the aliens considered harmless. But Maria had been an electrical engineer before the war, and she had hidden advanced components inside the basic machinery. When the time came, those hidden systems could be activated to provide power for weapons and communications that the Zephyrians would never expect. The resistance network stretched across the continents, connecting isolated settlements through hidden radio systems and coded messages. Travelers carried news and supplies between communities, maintaining contact despite alien surveillance. The Zephyrians knew that humans communicated, but they underestimated the complexity and reach of the networks. Emma Lee was only 16, but she already understood mathematics and physics better than most adults. Dr. Foster had been teaching her since she was small, recognizing a brilliant mind that could help rebuild human civilization. Emma worked in the settlement's textile shop during the day, but at night she studied quantum mechanics and engineering, principles by candlelight. The aliens had made a critical mistake in their occupation. They had assumed that humans would forget their technological heritage after a generation. Instead, the survivors had carefully preserved knowledge and passed it to their children. Every settlement had hidden libraries filled with technical manuals and scientific texts. Every family told stories of the time when humans traveled between stars. Tony Garcia trained fighters in the hills outside the settlements. He had been a Marine before the war, and he understood that physical strength meant nothing without organization and discipline. His students learned to move silently through ruins, to communicate without words, and to strike quickly before disappearing. They practiced with crude weapons while dreaming of the day they would carry guns again. The resistance grew stronger each year, despite losses to alien patrols and accidents. New members joined when they came of age, or when circumstances drove them to action. The network expanded as new settlements were contacted and brought into the fold. The Zephyrians saw only scattered groups of primitive humans scraping out an existence in the ruins. They did not see the patient, determined movement that was preparing to reclaim the stars. Dr. Amy Foster stood before the radio transmitter hidden deep beneath the ruins of Chicago. The device looked simple enough, built from vacuum tubes and copper wire that the Zephyrian sensors could not detect as dangerous technology. But this machine would change everything. For the first time in 25 years, isolated human settlements could talk to each other across vast distances without alien interference. The breakthrough had taken months of careful work. Amy and her team had studied pre-digital radio technology, learning how their grandparents had communicated before computers and satellites. They built transmitters in hidden workshops and tested them in underground bunkers where alien drones could not detect the signals. The network grew slowly, connecting settlement to settlement like a spider's web made of invisible threads. Sam Johnson crawled through the wreckage of a Zephyrian transport that had crashed during a storm. The aliens rarely lost equipment, but when they did, they destroyed it completely to prevent human scavenging. This time, they had missed something. Sam's trained eye spotted the quantum processor buried beneath twisted metal and burned circuits. The device was damaged but not destroyed, and Sam knew exactly what it could tell them about their enemy's weaknesses. Working with Maria Santos in her hidden laboratory, Sam connected the processor to monitoring equipment built from salvaged components. The quantum system operated on frequencies that made it unstable when exposed to certain electromagnetic patterns. Maria smiled as she recorded the data. Humans had just found a way to fight back against technology that was centuries more advanced than anything they could build. The first test of their electromagnetic pulse device came during a routine patrol. A Zephyrian drone flew over New Detroit, scanning for signs of forbidden technology as it did every week. This time, Maria activated her hidden transmitter at just the right moment. The drone stopped moving, its systems scrambled by the electromagnetic interference. It fell from the sky like a dead bird, crashing into the ruins outside the settlement. Kate Sullivan read the message with growing excitement. The radio network had carried news from settlements across North America and beyond. Groups in former Europe and Asia had also discovered ways to disable alien technology. The resistance was no longer a collection of isolated cells struggling alone. They were becoming an army with communication and coordination. Ben Collins organized the production schedules that would turn their settlements from survival communities into weapons factories. The forges that made farming tools could also make gun barrels. The workshops that repaired machinery could manufacture explosive devices. The textile mills that wove cloth could produce materials for camouflage and equipment. Everything had to look innocent to alien observers while serving the hidden purpose of war preparation. Captain Nick Taylor had been the best pilot in the Air Force before the invasion. For 25 years, he had worked as a mechanic and dreamed of flying. Again. Now he stood before a rebuilt aircraft hidden in a cave system outside Denver. The plane looked like a primitive propeller craft that the aliens would ignore, but its engine had been modified with captured alien technology, and its weapons bay held electromagnetic pulse devices that could disable Zephyrian equipment. The resistance leadership met in the deep tunnels beneath Washington to plan their first coordinated strike. Representatives from dozens of settlements gathered around Kate's maps, their faces serious in the flickering candlelight. They had weapons that could fight alien technology. They had communications that could coordinate attacks across continents. They had the element of surprise, but they also knew that failure would bring terrible punishment from the sky. Emma Lee had grown into a brilliant scientist under Dr. Foster's guidance. At 21, she understood Zephyrian technology better than most humans understood their own tools. Working in a laboratory built inside an abandoned subway tunnel, she had successfully reverse-engineered alien communication systems. Her homemade devices could intercept Zephyrian transmissions and even send false signals that confused their sensors. The most important discovery came when Emma detected transmissions from beyond Earth's solar system. The signals were human in origin, coming from the direction of Proxima Centauri and Kepler. The colonies that Dr. Maya Rodriguez had warned 25 years ago were still alive and still human. Emma's hands shook as she recorded the messages. Humanity had not died with Earth. Their children among the stars had grown strong while Earth's survivors had endured. Tony Garcia's fighters had evolved from desperate survivors into skilled soldiers. They moved through the ruins like shadows, striking at alien outposts and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Their weapons were crude but effective, combining human ingenuity with scavenged alien materials. More importantly, they had learned to think like guerrilla fighters, using the destroyed landscape to their advantage. The Zephyrians began to notice that their equipment was failing more often. Drones crashed during routine patrols. Monitoring stations went offline for hours at a time. Communication relays transmitted garbled signals that made no sense. The aliens investigated but found only primitive humans living in simple settlements, using basic tools and showing no signs of advanced technology. Lucy Chen had worked as a maintenance technician for the Zephyrian Occupation Force for 15 years. The aliens considered humans useful for simple manual labor, and Lucy had carefully cultivated an image of quiet competence that kept her invisible. While she cleaned their equipment and repaired their facilities, she memorized every detail of their technology and mapped every weakness in their systems. The intelligence that Lucy provided was invaluable to the Resistance. She knew which installations were lightly guarded and which contained important equipment. She understood the patrol schedules and communication protocols. Most importantly, she had identified the central command station that controlled all Zephyrian operations on Earth. If that facility could be captured or destroyed, the entire occupation force would be blinded and confused. Jake Williams was part of the new generation that had grown up during the occupation. At 19, he had never known peace, but he had also never known defeat. The aliens were just another obstacle to overcome, like harsh weather or dangerous terrain. Jake and his fellow young fighters brought an intensity to the Resistance that surprised even veteran soldiers like Tony Garcia. Nora Mitchell worked as an engineer in the secret workshops, where captured alien technology was studied and replicated. Her specialty was finding ways to integrate Zephyrian components with human engineering principles. The hybrid devices she created were often crude and unreliable, but they worked well enough to give humanity an edge in the coming conflict. The Resistance made contact with the human colonies through Emma's communication devices. Admiral Ryan Brooks commanded a fleet of ships built in secret over 2 decades, vessels that combined human determination with alien technology salvaged from defeated Zephyrian patrols. The colonies had never stopped preparing for war, and now they knew that Earth needed their help. The moment of decision arrived when Zephyrian reinforcements appeared at the edge of the solar system. The aliens had finally realized that their occupation force was losing control, and they were sending additional troops to restore order. Kate Sullivan looked at her assembled commanders and knew that the time for hiding was over. The Resistance had grown as strong as it could in secret. Now they had to fight or watch their chance for freedom disappear forever. The war began before dawn on a cold morning in March. Kate Sullivan's voice crackled through hidden radio networks across 6 continents as she gave the signal that Resistance fighters had waited 25 years to hear. In thousands of locations, humans emerged from hiding places with weapons they had built in secret and hatred they had nursed through decades of oppression. Captain Nick Taylor lifted his rebuilt aircraft into the gray sky above Denver, his heart pounding with the joy of flight after so many years on the ground. Behind him flew a squadron of planes that looked primitive but carried electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to cripple alien technology. The Zephyrians had never bothered to defend against aircraft because they believed humans could not build anything capable of reaching their orbital stations. Sam Johnson's EMP devices activated simultaneously across North America, sending invisible pulses of energy that scrambled quantum processors and disrupted alien communications. Zephyrian drones fell from the sky like broken toys while monitoring stations went dark one by one. The aliens found themselves blind and deaf for the first time since the invasion began. Tony Garcia led his fighters in a coordinated assault on the Zephyrian command post outside Chicago. The facility had been considered impregnable, protected by energy shields and automated defenses that could vaporize any attacker. But Lucy Chen had provided detailed intelligence about the facility's weaknesses, and Maria Santos had built devices that could overload the shield generators with focused electromagnetic bursts. The attack began with a series of small explosions that knocked out the external sensors. Tony's team moved through the confusion like ghosts, their faces painted with ash and their movements silent as death. They had practiced this assault hundreds of times in mock-ups built from salvaged materials, and every fighter knew their role perfectly. Dr. Amy Foster and Emma Lee worked frantically in their hidden laboratory as reports flooded in through the radio network. The attacks were succeeding beyond their most optimistic projections, but they knew the aliens would adapt quickly. The 2 scientists had prepared a final surprise that would keep the Zephyrians confused long enough for the human colonies to arrive with reinforcements. Ben Collins coordinated supply lines that stretched across the former United States, moving ammunition and equipment to fighters who were striking at alien installations. His settlements had been preparing for this day for years, stockpiling weapons and supplies in hidden caches throughout the wasteland. Now those preparations were paying off as resistance fighters found everything they needed to continue their attacks. The Zephyrians tried to call for help from their fleet in deep space, but Emma's jamming devices filled the communication channels with static and false signals. The aliens sent distress calls that were scrambled into meaningless noise, while fake messages told the distant fleet that Earth was secure and no assistance was needed. For the first time since the invasion, the Zephyrians were truly alone. Jake Williams and his squad infiltrated the alien detention center where hundreds of humans were held for experimentation. The young fighters moved through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels that the tall aliens had never considered as security risks. Their electromagnetic weapons disabled the cell locks and guard systems, allowing the prisoners to escape while confusion spread through the facility. Nora Mitchell activated the hybrid power systems that she had hidden in major settlements, providing electricity for weapons and communication equipment that the Resistance had kept secret for decades. The aliens had grown accustomed to humans living with simple tools and basic technology. They were not prepared for coordinated attacks using advanced electromagnetic weapons powered by fusion reactors disguised as steam engines. Captain Taylor's aircraft reached the Zephyrian orbital stations and began their bombing runs, using weapons that confused alien sensors by appearing to be primitive rockets while actually carrying sophisticated electromagnetic warheads. The space stations had no defenses against such attacks because their builders had never imagined that humans could reach orbital altitude with effective weapons. The resistance fighters who had grown up during the occupation proved to be the most effective soldiers in the underground war. Unlike the older generation, they felt no awe or fear toward alien technology. To them, the Zephyrians were just another enemy to be defeated through superior tactics and determination. Their attacks were swift and merciless, showing no mercy to occupiers who had shown none to humanity. Lucy Chen used her access to alien facilities to sabotage critical systems from within. She introduced viruses into computer networks and planted explosive charges in power systems, timing the sabotage to coincide with external attacks. Her work ensured that even undamaged alien facilities became unreliable and dangerous to their own operators. The turning point came when Tony Garcia's team successfully captured the Central Command Station intact. Emma Lee's devices had convinced the facility's automated systems that the attacking humans were authorized Zephyrian personnel, causing the defenses to shut down and the doors to open. The Resistance suddenly had access to the aliens' complete intelligence network and command structure. Dr. Foster studied the captured alien computers with growing excitement. The files contained detailed information about other worlds under Zephyrian occupation, including the locations of human colonies that had been developing their own resistance movements. More importantly, the records showed that the alien empire was not as strong as it appeared. Many subject species were on the verge of rebellion, waiting only for someone to strike the first blow. Admiral Ryan Brooks received Emma's messages in the deep space beyond Pluto, where his liberation fleet had been waiting for the signal to attack. The colonial ships were strange hybrids of human engineering and alien technology, built in secret shipyards around distant stars. They had been designed for one purpose: to return to Earth and drive out the occupiers. The Zephyrian reinforcements that had been approaching Earth suddenly found their communications jammed and their sensors blinded by interference from the planet's surface. They had expected to find a primitive world guarded by a small occupation force. Instead, they detected energy signatures that indicated advanced weapons and defensive systems. The aliens hesitated, unsure whether they were approaching a trap. Maria Santos coordinated the electromagnetic attacks that kept alien reinforcements confused and disoriented. Her network of hidden transmitters created false sensor readings that made single human settlements appear to be massive military installations. The aliens saw threats everywhere and could not determine which targets were real and which were illusions. The resistance achieved something in those first days of open war that they had not dared to hope for during 25 years of hidden preparation. They had turned the tables on their oppressors, making the advanced alien technology work against itself. The Zephyrians, who had crushed human civilization with overwhelming force, now found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see or understand. Kate. Sullivan stood in the captured command center and watched reports flood in from around the world. The Resistance was winning battles they had never expected to survive. Human settlements that had hidden in fear for decades were now striking at alien installations with weapons that should not have existed. The underground war had become a surface rebellion, and the balance of power was shifting toward the species that had learned to thrive in darkness. Liberation Day arrived with the thunder of human ships dropping out of hyperspace above Earth's scarred surface. Admiral Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the CNS Freedom, watching his colonial fleet take positions around the planet that humanity had never stopped calling home. 25 years of secret preparation had led to this moment, when Earth's children would return to free their birth world from alien oppression. The battle began as the sun rose over New Detroit, where Ben Collins had gathered thousands of fighters for the final assault on Zephyrian positions. The electromagnetic pulse weapons that Sam Johnson had perfected filled the air with invisible energy that turned alien technology into useless metal and plastic. Across 6 continents, human settlements that had pretended to be primitive farming, communities revealed themselves as military bases equipped with hybrid weapons. Captain Nick Taylor led his air squadrons in coordinated strikes against the remaining Zephyrian orbital platforms. His rebuilt aircraft moved like angry wasps around the massive alien structures, their crude appearance hiding sophisticated targeting systems and electromagnetic warheads. The aliens had never bothered to develop defenses against atmospheric aircraft because they had believed humans incapable of building anything that could threaten orbital installations. Kate. Sullivan coordinated the ground assault from her command center in the ruins of Washington, watching as decades of careful planning finally came together in perfect harmony. Her resistance fighters emerged from hidden bunkers and concealed positions throughout the former capital, moving with precision that amazed even veteran soldiers. They had trained for this day through endless drills and practice sessions, preparing for the moment when they could finally fight openly. Emma Lee worked frantically at her communication station, maintaining the electromagnetic jamming that kept Zephyrian reinforcements confused and disoriented. Her hybrid human-alien technology had evolved far beyond anything the original alien designers had imagined possible. The jamming signals she generated were so sophisticated that they convinced enemy sensors that single human settlements were massive military complexes bristling with advanced weapons. Colonel Frank Lopez led the Space Marines from Admiral Brooks's fleet in boarding actions against Zephyrian vessels that had been disabled by the electromagnetic attacks. The Colonial Marines had trained in zero-gravity environments for decades, preparing for ship-to-ship combat that would decide the fate of human civilization. Their weapons were purpose-built for fighting in the confines of alien spacecraft, designed to be lethal against Zephyrian armor while avoiding damage to critical ship systems. Tony Garcia's ground forces achieved breakthrough after breakthrough as alien defensive positions collapsed under coordinated assault. The Zephyrians had grown complacent during 25 years of easy occupation, never expecting to face organized resistance from a species they had written off as primitive. Their automated defenses were designed to stop individual attackers, or small groups, not coordinated military operations involving thousands of fighters. Dr. Amy Foster and her scientific team worked to decode the alien command systems that Lucy Chen had helped them capture. The Zephyrian technology was sophisticated, but not incomprehensible, especially to humans who had spent decades studying salvaged components and intercepted communications. Within hours of capturing the central command station, Foster's team had gained access to the complete alien military network. Sam Johnson led a specialized team in the most dangerous mission of the war, capturing intact Zephyrian spacecraft to turn their own weapons against them. The aliens had designed their ships to be operated only by Zephyrian neural interfaces, but Johnson had spent years studying the quantum processors that controlled alien technology. His electromagnetic modifications could fool the ship computers into accepting human operators. The breakthrough came when Johnson's team successfully activated a captured Zephyrian command ship, gaining control of the orbital defense grid that had kept humanity imprisoned for a quarter-century. The massive weapons platforms that had once rained destruction on human cities now turned their guns on alien vessels, filling space around Earth with the fire of liberation. Maria Santos coordinated the power systems that fed energy to humanity's growing arsenal of electromagnetic weapons. Her hidden fusion reactors, disguised as simple steam engines for decades, now revealed their true capability as they provided unlimited power for the resistance offensive. The aliens had allowed humans to build basic power generation, never suspecting that simple-looking equipment could conceal technology that rivaled their own. Jake Williams and Nora Mitchell spearheaded the assault on the Zephyrian fortress complex in former California, where the aliens had concentrated their remaining forces for a final stand. The young fighters had grown up knowing nothing but war and occupation, and they brought an intensity to combat that shocked both allies and enemies. They fought without fear, because they had never known a world where freedom was possible, only the determination to create one. The space battle above Earth raged for hours as colonial ships engaged Zephyrian reinforcements that had finally arrived from deep space. Admiral Brooks had prepared for this confrontation for decades, designing his fleet specifically to counter alien advantages in technology and firepower. His ships were smaller and faster than Zephyrian vessels, built for hit-and-run tactics, that prevented the aliens from bringing their superior weapons to bear. The tide of battle turned decisively when Captain Taylor's aircraft successfully disabled the alien flagship's quantum processors with a concentrated electromagnetic pulse. The massive vessel, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, became a drifting hulk as its computer systems crashed and its weapons went offline. Human boarding parties swarmed aboard to capture the ship and its advanced technology intact. Lucy Chen emerged from hiding after years of pretending to be a loyal servant of the occupation force. Her knowledge of alien systems and facilities proved invaluable as human forces advanced through Zephyrian strongholds. She had memorized the layout of every important installation and the weakness of every defensive system, information that saved countless human lives and shortened the war by months. The final assault on the last Zephyrian stronghold began at sunset, with human forces attacking from land, sea, and air in perfect coordination. Ben Collins led citizen soldiers who had spent decades preparing for this moment, while professional military units from the colonies provided covering fire with weapons that combined the best of human and alien technology. The Zephyrians made their last stand in the fortress they had built on the ruins of Geneva, where they had signed the decree that condemned humanity to technological primitivism. Their energy shields and automated defenses had held against conventional attacks for weeks, but they could not withstand the electromagnetic weapons that Sam Johnson had perfected through years of careful study and experimentation. As the alien, defenses finally collapsed under human assault. Kate Sullivan stood on the command tower and watched Zephyrian soldiers surrender to fighters who had spent their entire lives preparing for this victory. The species that had tried to bury humanity under the weight of technological regression had instead created an enemy more dangerous than anything they had ever faced. The war ended not with destruction, but with capture, as human forces took control. of alien installations, ships, and technology across the solar system. The Zephyrians, who had come to enforce humanity's submission, found themselves prisoners of the species they had tried to keep primitive. Earth belonged to humans again, but this time they would be ready for any enemy who dared to challenge their right to reach for the stars. 6 months after Liberation Day, Earth hummed with activity that would have amazed the Zephyrians who had once ruled from orbital stations. Admiral Ryan Brooks stood in the rebuilt command center in Geneva, looking out at construction sites where human and alien technology merged into something entirely new. The planet that had been meant to remain a primitive quarantine zone had become the most heavily fortified world in known space. Dr. Amy Foster led teams of scientists from both Earth and the colonies in laboratories that combined salvaged Zephyrian equipment with human engineering innovation. The aliens had possessed superior technology, but they had never learned to adapt and improvise the way humans did naturally. Foster's teams were creating weapons and defenses that surpassed anything either species had built alone, combining alien precision with human creativity. Emma Lee worked alongside colonial physicists in developing faster-than-light communication, systems that could not be jammed or intercepted by any known technology. Her understanding of quantum mechanics had grown far beyond anything the Zephyrians had achieved, partly because humans approached the problems from directions that alien minds had never considered. The new communication network would ensure that human worlds could coordinate defense and share information instantly across galactic distances. Ben Collins supervised the reconstruction of major cities using construction techniques that blended human architecture with alien materials. Science. New Detroit was rising from the ashes as a testament to human resilience, its buildings designed to withstand orbital bombardment while housing the factories and research facilities that would keep Earth defended. The city that had grown from scraps and determination was becoming a symbol of humanity's refusal to accept defeat. Sam Johnson had become Earth's leading expert on hybrid technology, combining the reliability of human engineering with the advanced capabilities of alien science. His workshops produced weapons that could adapt to changing battlefield conditions and defenses that became stronger when attacked. The electromagnetic pulse weapons that had won the Liberation War were now integrated into ship systems and planetary defense grids that made Earth nearly impregnable. The first test of Earth's new defenses came when long-range sensors detected a Zephyrian battle group approaching from deep space. The aliens had finally responded to the loss of their occupation, fleet by sending a full military force to reclaim their lost prize. They arrived expecting to find a primitive world defended by captured technology that humans barely understood. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted from the ranks of resistance fighters who had proven themselves during the Underground War, led Earth's defense fleet to meet the alien attack. His ships were strange hybrids that looked like no vessels any navy had ever built, combining human tactical flexibility with alien firepower in designs that confused enemy targeting systems. The Battle of Earth's liberation became legend within hours of its beginning. The Zephyrians approached with confidence, born of technological superiority and previous easy victories, only to discover that the humans they faced were nothing like the species they had conquered 25 years earlier. Earth's defenders fought with weapons that adapted during combat and tactics that changed faster than alien computers could analyze. Captain Nick Taylor commanded fighter squadrons that moved through space like schools of fish, their formations shifting and flowing in patterns that Zephyrian targeting systems could not predict. The pilots had trained in gravity wells and asteroid fields, learning to use every advantage that human reflexes and creativity could provide. Their ships were smaller and less powerful than alien fighters, but they moved with purpose and coordination that made them nearly impossible to hit. Maria Santos coordinated the planetary defense grid from her command center deep beneath New Geneva, managing power distribution for weapon systems that drew energy from fusion reactors hidden across 6 continents. The electromagnetic pulse cannons she had designed could disable entire alien squadrons with single shots, while the captured Zephyrian orbital platforms provided covering fire with weapons turned against their former masters. Tony Garcia led the ground forces that prepared for possible alien landing attempts, but the invasion never came. The Zephyrian fleet found itself outmatched and outmaneuvered by defenders who fought with desperate creativity and tactical innovation. Admiral Morrison's ships captured alien vessels faster than the Zephyrians could destroy them, turning the enemy's own firepower against their remaining forces. The decisive moment came when Emma Lee's communication systems detected transmissions from other worlds under Zephyrian occupation. Species across the galaxy had heard about humanity's successful rebellion and were beginning their own uprisings against alien rule. The empire that had seemed invincible was cracking as subject peoples realized that their oppressors could be defeated. Dr. Foster analyzed captured Zephyrian databases and discovered that the alien empire was far weaker than it appeared. The Zephyrians controlled their territory through fear and technological superiority, but they lacked the numbers to fight sustained rebellions on multiple worlds. Humanity's victory had exposed the fundamental weakness of an empire built on intimidation rather than strength. Kate Sullivan, now serving as Earth's Director of Interstellar Relations, opened communications with resistance movements on dozens of worlds. Her message was simple. Humans had proven that the Zephyrians could be beaten, and Earth would provide assistance to any species willing to fight for freedom. The underground networks that had sustained humanity through 25 years of occupation became the foundation for a galactic alliance against tyranny. The Zephyrian commander who had come to reclaim Earth found himself negotiating surrender instead of accepting submission. Admiral Morrison's captured alien fleet outnumbered the remaining Zephyrian ships, while Earth's defenses made orbital bombardment impossible. The species that had once casually destroyed human cities now faced destruction themselves if they refused to withdraw. Jake Williams and Nora Mitchell led the boarding parties that captured the Zephyrian flagship, adding its advanced technology to humanity's growing arsenal. The young soldiers who had grown up under occupation showed no mercy to their former oppressors, but they followed orders to take prisoners rather than seek revenge. The information those prisoners provided would help liberate other worlds from Zephyrian control. Lucy Chen worked with colonial intelligence specialists to decode Zephyrian military communications, revealing the locations of other occupation fleets and the weaknesses of alien defensive positions. Her years of pretending to serve the occupiers had given her insights into Zephyrian psychology and tactics that proved invaluable in planning liberation operations for other worlds. The transformation of Earth accelerated as more alien technology was captured and integrated into human systems. Sam Johnson's hybrid designs influenced everything from starship engines to medical equipment, creating tools that neither species could have developed alone. The planet that had been bombed back to a primitive state was becoming more advanced than it had ever been before the invasion. Admiral Brooks coordinated with resistance movements across the galaxy, providing ships and weapons to species that had been suppressed for centuries by Zephyrian rule. The Liberation Fleet that had freed Earth became the nucleus of a growing armada dedicated to ending alien oppression wherever it existed. Humanity had gone from victim to liberator in less than a year. The final humiliation for the Zephyrian Empire came when their remaining forces around Earth formally surrendered to the species they had tried to keep primitive. The ceremony took place in orbit above the planet they had once bombed, with alien commanders signing documents that acknowledged human sovereignty and promised reparations for the damage their occupation had caused. Children played in the parks of New Geneva as Admiral Morrison's ships patrolled overhead, their hulls bearing the symbols of a dozen liberated worlds. The species that had been buried under 25 years of oppression had risen stronger than anyone could have imagined. Earth had become the capital of a growing alliance that would ensure no other world suffered as humanity had suffered. The stars that had once seemed impossibly distant now beckoned with promise rather than threat. Humanity had learned that strength came not from technology alone, but from the refusal to accept defeat. They had been buried by their enemies, but like seeds in fertile ground, they had grown in darkness until they were ready to reach for the light of freedom that would never be extinguished again.